So for however many of you, no, it's 5. That's actually better than I expected. Hopefully an upgrade on the internet quality. I've been trying to save the money I've been using for gas and deliberately upgrade. So hopefully no cutouts this time. Say a little something if you're watching, you want to get your check-in points. Keep me posted about things like sound volume, like whether or not you can hear me. So if you'd be willing to acknowledge whether or not you can hear the words coming out of my mouth, that's good. And of course, mainly what I'm doing here is trying to answer questions that you have, partly because I'm sick of email. Not that you shouldn't keep sending me emails. Definitely keep sending emails with questions about the essay, general course concerns, anything like that. But also just trying to at least start flirting with the beta version of what this course might look like if we have to go fully online, which we may have to at some point. Hey, Nicole. Nice to have you. So yeah, just keep saying hi. I'm gonna maybe talk for 5 minutes about the last essay, just to try to kill time in case we gather anybody more than we're up to 6, even better. So I'm going to talk about the last essay very briefly, very vaguely. I can tell you probably can't read these words. Originally, what we were going to do is we were going to have visual aids until I realized you're going to get blinding reflections from the window because of the improvised lighting. So one step at a time. So the last essay, if you can read these vocab terms here, again, there's no quizzes, but that's the vocab you need for the last essay. That's kind of the main event. Quantitative research versus qualitative research. And essentially, that's numbers versus analysis, or quantitative data versus how you interpret or analyze that data. And that's really the main point of that last essay. I deliberately wanted to prime you with the example of, would you stop driving your car for a year if you could save a certain number of lives? If you knew that you could save people's lives, like 3,000 people's lives, then would you be willing to make that sacrifice? There's all kinds of data because of insurance companies about how many people per year die in cars, car accidents. It's something like 2,977 is the typical average of the number of people that die in car accidents in America. One essay topic that worked really well for this was looking at that statistic. Almost 3,000 people a month die in car accidents, and then correlating that with the question of self-driving cars, because believe it or not, self-driving cars are probably going to be way safer than any human ever in terms of likelihood of getting into an accident. So it's a potential real question, the actual question of, if you were able to stop driving your car completely and only rely on self-driving cars or only rely on public transport, it's potentially possible that by doing that, you'd save 3,000 lives a month. You'd prevent 9/11 of American lives lost per month. There's your ethical quandary. So you got the numbers, you got the research that's done quantitatively, and you have the qualitative interpretation of the data. So that's really the kind of main crux of the essay. Noticing that I got this shadow here. I could be doing shadow puppets. Awesome. So there it is. It's way too short and way too vague, but I just wanted to kill some time in case anybody was going to chime in. We're up to 10. We doubled our numbers in 3 minutes. That's the kind of exponential growth I really appreciate. So Nicole's not getting anything except buffering. Anybody else, if you're having trouble with the actual technological end, just chime in, because there certainly could be problems on my end. You want to mess around with your end as much as possible, but things like volume to control the video feed itself. If you're getting any kind of a major delay, just keep chiming in as needed. Yeah, good. Yeah, people talking to each other, helping each other. Couldn't ask for anything better. So that's pretty much it. That's all I had prepared. Wanted to get back to my favorite part of teaching, which is actually answering questions. So I dare you, right this second, try to ask me some questions about the essay. Ask me a question about the course itself and how the course is playing out. We've been forced to move online mostly. Or anything else you want to know. Why this bizarre pink thing is here and why I'm wearing a pink shirt. That's because the camera will automatically cancel out redness if there's pink and red on the screen, and so that makes my face look less splotchy. Good question. Super787B asks, when's the essay due? As per the last 3 emails, the extra credit was going to be in by Friday, but you'll still get you'll still get full credit for the essay if you get that essay to me in my possession by 11:59 tomorrow night. One of the reasons I wanted to do this now, some kind of a Q&A situation, was figuring a few of you may have waited to the last minute. You've got some concerns you didn't really have to confront until right now, and we're within 27 hours of the final deadline. So for full credit for the next essay, whether you're in STEM or whether you're in the EN 100, it'll be 11:59 p.m. tomorrow evening. Keep going with other questions, other concerns. The new one is going to be due at the end of the semester. Thank you for that clarification. So our last official day, I believe, is May 19th. I think that's the last official class day, whatever that means anymore, for ECC. So I'm probably going to have that last essay due right at the end, because that's your last assignment. There's no final exam. There's no additional assessments of any kind. That last essay is kind of your last order of business. Don't forget there's 4 essays total throughout the whole semester. They're all equal in weight, so it's not a bigger, scarier essay at the end. It's just one more of the same kind of essay you've been doing. Again, that's true for STEM and for EN 110. And so May 19th is probably going to be the deadline. I haven't decided if I'll do something like midnight on the 18th or 11:59 on the 19th. Just because that reminds me of grading. Don't forget to email me if you want grades. I'm not going to put anything on Blackboard. I'm bouncing between multiple platforms all the time, experimenting with Remind. As a separate note, you can look in your email to see if you got an invitation to the Remind application. So that's one platform. Blackboard is a platform monopoly nightmare, as I've told you in class. Messing between other websites, looking at Google Teach, Google Education, whatever Google's main educational platform is. So that's already too many. Definitely not going to do any grades on Blackboard. I'm just grading the essays as they come in. I have most of your last essays done, so email me if you want to know how you did on the last essay. And one last point to make about grading before I get into some other good-looking questions. The grades are probably not due until the 26th, so that's when you'd want to psychologically prepare yourself to get the final averages so you know how you did in the course. But you can email me at any point through the semester. I'll always give you an average, and I can tell you how the last essays went. All right, I have a problem with my essay. I was going to do overpopulation with my 3 solutions, being a Thanos-type solution, kill half the population, restrict progeny, i.e. China, and colonize another planet. So that sounds perfect. It sounds like you understand the nature of the assignment, especially for STEM. So I'm talking specifically to STEM students now. Pick a big problem that is wide and very general and very social. And then the first solution should be weird. It should be bizarre. It should be strange. When I use the phrase lateral thinking in these little instructional videos, that's what I mean. Thanos level Chinese totalitarian government. And you're not suggesting that that's a good solution. You actually want your first solution to deliberately be weird and bizarre because it'll set up some contrast. So when you get to the second and third solutions in the essay, the first solution, the weirder it is, even if you treat it totally logically and pretend it's a very realistic solution at first, will make the second 2 solutions work better. So that's a basic persuasive technique. You kind of highball at first. You create a solution that's deliberately weird, deliberately bizarre, kind of far out. That sets the parameters over here. So when you describe your more rational, reasonable solutions, they come off looking more logical and more methodical because you started off with a weird one. So compare and contrast is part of the essay. And the more weird your first solution, the more contrast you can suggest. So absolutely, go for the Thanos approach. Just had a pop-up ad pop up directly in front of your questions. So bear with me for some technical difficulties. There we go. Do you know, oops, it disappeared again. Looked like a good question too. I hope I can bring it back. Do you know when we'll see more information for the investigative essay? Yeah, that's when I get to it. What is today? Sunday. So worst case scenario, let me give you the worst possible situation. It would be Wednesday. So by Wednesday, you'll know directions for the last essay. I'll finalize the due date hand-in scenario, which will be a Dropbox on Blackboard, but I can also decide whether or not it's 11:59 on the 18th or noon on the 19th. I'll work out those specifics. So worst case scenario, just so you get a deadline in your mind, by Wednesday, you'll know what the last essay is, and you'll know kind of what the specifics for hand-in scenario. So good question. Are the 15 10-point homeworks assignments due then? So that's a really good question too. I'm still trying to create like a main page on Blackboard that has a kind of nice clean one page you can visualize the rest of the semester, and I would want that to look and reflect, would want it to look like and reflect the grading contracts. I mean, the grading contracts are essentially the rough draft of the rest of the semester. And what we're going to do with the 15-point assignments, they're going to be due on the same date that the last essay is due. That's terrible because that means there's no major incentive not to wait to the last minute, the last 48 hours. It's May 17th. You're in panic mode for mother classes anyway. You haven't started the essay and you haven't done a lot of the short homework assignments. So that's not best, but I've been debating with myself whether or not to create kind of a staggered due date system. Logistically, that's very difficult, and it also would cut some of you out. Some of you actually might be able to pass even if you procrastinate, wait till the last couple of weeks, and then try to shovel all the homework assignments in at once. That's an available option to you if you want to do that. So the short version of the answer to that question is the 15 10-point assignments will be due at the end of the semester within 24 hours of the last essay. That means it's up to you to be working on the 10-point homeworks as you're going. So you're deliberately trying to stagger them so you don't wind up in a situation. Chances are, if you're watching this, you're the kind of person that takes the initiative anyway. So you're probably most likely to be on point with situations like that. So other than the final essay and the 15 10-point assignments, there's nothing else due. That's the upside of the grading contracts. I wanted to make sure that you could see every single thing that you have to do for this class for the rest of the semester. So the grading contracts are designed as a visualization minus due dates, so you know exactly what's due. So once you've knocked out the 15 10-point assignments, and once you've handed in that last essay, you're done. And I'm definitely encouraging anybody that wants to submit stuff early. I have like 4 or 5 of you, and you know who you are, who have already handed in something like 10 or 12 short homework assignments. You've asked me enough about the last essay that you're already starting to think about topics for that last essay. That's fantastic. If you can get everything done in the next 3 weeks, submit it and say, here's everything I need to get my A in the class. That makes my life a lot easier, because then I'm not in the same situation you are, trying to calculate final grades with a tidal wave of essays and assignments coming in at the end. I'm assuming I'll be on lockdown triple by then. So nothing else is due other than the 10-point assignments and the essays. For the completion check, for the completion checklist, it says solutions in the career field essay. I've never heard of that. Is that due around May 19th? So the solutions in the career field was the working title for the modest proposal essay. So if you're working on the problem solution essay or the modest proposal essay, you're good to go, you're on point, and you're taking care of business. Come back. I saw a good question fly past me in the nighttime. Can we email you a rough draft and get pointers and revisions before tomorrow? Definitely yes. And if you're here and you're listening, we're up to 14 of you now. Anybody who's here and you're taking the initiative to actually watch this video, you can request an extension. I'd still ask you to put it through email so it's official and I have it on record. But if you got this far, it's Sunday night at 6:15 p.m. If you're interested in an extension on either the modest proposal essay or the problem solution essay, depending on whether or not you're in EN 110 or the EN 100 or the STEM EN 102, extinction credit if you want it. Just make it an email. And in the meantime, yeah, I'll take as many drafts as you're willing to send me. I'll give you the working grade so you know what it would get. It's a B- as is if you don't make any changes. But I'll also obviously make suggestions for improvements. Personally, I'm a fan of the idea. So you're saying that that shouldn't be my good one. Well, don't forget, it could be your good solution, Nicole. You still have to talk practical implementation. So you'd have to decide how difficult it would be for you as an individual to make contact with Thanos, whether or not you're going to be on his good side or not, deal with his ethical quandaries, reconcile them with your own, and then move to the final implementation. But yeah, if, like I said, you can go satirical with this essay. So if that's your best solution, totally fine with me. Do we get extra points doing the 15-point assignments early? No, but you can do more. So I haven't specifically worked this out mathematically, but you could, for instance, do 17 of the 20 10-point assignments. And if you went above and beyond and did the extra 2, sure, I would give you some extra points for that. And that might be if you're on the fence, you're at exactly a B+ average with essays, but you also have like a lot of 9s and 8s out of 10 on the short homework assignments, then yes, I would definitely give you some a little extra nudge if you did a few extra assignments. Don't make the mistake of thinking you can take yourself from a C up to an A by doing all of the assignments. If your essay average is a C-, extra assignments will help, might boost you up to a C+. But be realistic with your expectations. Where can I find the new grading contract? I think the most up-to-date grading contracts are on Blackboard, but I've already had multiple situations where I posted something on 5 out of 6 classes, but then that 6th class got an older version of something. So as I reluctantly and angrily reacquaint myself with Blackboard, one of the casualties will be I'll submit an updated version of something in one class that won't make it to another version of the clone of the same class. So email me specifically. Go to Blackboard first, see if the grading contract is up to date, and if not, just email me and I can get you specifics as needed. Kate is asking, wait, so other than the investigative, there's nothing else due? What about the solutions in the career field or the 5-minute video presentation? Don't forget the 5-minute video presentation is optional. You can swap that out. But no, there's the essay that you're working on that's due tomorrow. There's the final essay that's about ethics. That's the qualitative essay. But then you should be done. If you're still worried that you might be missing an assignment, or one thing that's happening is I'm using different titles for the same assignment, and that's confusing you, understandably. That's definitely my fault. I'm so confused. Sorry. Yeah, no, that's bound to happen. So you can always email me with specifics. But this should be true for everybody who could possibly be watching. There's an essay that's due tomorrow. There's one more essay, and that's it. So that should be a true statement that I can assume will apply to anybody who's watching this, unless you're a weirdo off the street who just found this online. And really, why would you be sitting on this of all things? Looking for any other questions. Do we get extra credit if we do more than 15? Yes. So I'm going to put a cap on it. So again, you couldn't go from a C+ to an A- by just doing the extra assignments. But if you want to do extra short assignments, the more than 15 of the short homework assignments, I would definitely give you extra credit for that. And that might be if you're at a B+, your essay average is pretty solid, that could push you over into A territory. Keep going. I'm getting down to the bottom of the list of questions. I'll do this for as long as anybody wants. So throw a question on there, whether it's essay related, class related, or just anything general that you want to talk about during COVID times. Do we get extra? Yeah, covered that one. Wait, we can just ask for an extinction, like no points taken off. Correct. You're here and you're watching this. We're up to 16. So of the 16 of you, if you want to write me an email at any point in the next 24 hours before the essay due date, I will give you an extinction. Just have an offer. Make me an offer I can't refuse in terms of a deadline. So you might say, I can have a really good essay by Friday at 2 p.m. That's fine, as long as you're giving yourself a new deadline will hold you to that deadline, and then you can make that your extension. So if you're here and you're listening, definitely an opportunity for an extension. And that's only true for those of you who are watching this live. If you find this video after the fact on YouTube, you weren't here, you can still ask for an extension. But definitely going to give preference to anybody that was willing to show up for this. COVID-19 is kind of close to an actual practical application. I can't help but want to build the entire STEM class around COVID, so that's totally fine. If you want to use that as your topic, if you want to talk about your specific situations in relation to COVID, if you want to go big picture in your essays, it's true for the last essay, it's true for the essay that we're working on right now. I'm not going to do the full version of this right this second, but looking at these vocab concepts for the last essay, it's all about numbers versus ethical decisions. So if you talk about something like flattening the curve of the spread of the virus, flattening the curve is all quantitative. It's all numbers, it's all analysis, it's all statistics and graphs. What you do with that, like how you interpret that or what actions you take, is all qualitative, which means you're in that more interpretive world. So absolutely, talk about COVID as much as you want to. Unfortunately, COVID's forced itself into our class anyway. So if you want to make that a topic for your paper, totally fair game. Yes, you can ask for an extension. Are the guidelines for the new essay up? No, I'm going to promise Wednesday afternoon is a worst case scenario. I'm working on the directions. I'm trying to adjust them with the COVID situation in mind. So I'd say worst case scenario, Wednesday afternoon. You'll know what the last essay looks like. You'll have directions for those. Maybe Monday, Tuesday if things go well. But I'm also expecting a barrage of desperate emails because an essay is due tomorrow. So we'll have to kind of time balance with that in mind. Getting close to the bottom of the list of questions again. So send a couple last desperate questions in, or wild card questions, because I'm basically going to call it quits when we get to the end here. I just can't wait to go back to work after this COVID is over, says Adrian. I can't wait to go back to work. I can't wait to go back to the actual stuff that I like about teaching, which has been taken away from me because of teaching online. Everything I love about teaching, I basically don't get to do. This is probably the closest I'm going to get. Literally me and my shadow are going to be figuring out how to do this alone. So yeah, I definitely feel you on that. Again, keep going with any other final desperate questions. Yes, you can ask for extension. Ooh, lost my place here. So this looks to be the third to last, and they're all from the same person. With specifics for the conclusion of the essay tomorrow, that's the part I'm having trouble with. Excellent question. So this is 100% for the STEM students and the EN 100 students. Your conclusion is kind of a step back and an appraisal. So if you are writing about being addicted to the internet, that's the subject of your internet, or the subject of your actual essay, then you might conclude with a look to the future and say, well, based on this last third solution, I think I have a really good chance of succeeding with this implementation. Or if you're writing a STEM essay about global warming and your third solution has to do with forcing everybody to join Habitat for Humanity for 2 years to reduce their carbon footprint, you just revisit that final conclusion and talk about if you honestly think it would work or not in the real world. So you can do some different things with the concluding paragraph. You're just deliberately trying to look to the future, review your overall argument, and kind of talk honestly if you think that third solution might work. I think I mentioned this in one of the little tutorials, but you can also tell me if it happened. You might pick a topic where that third solution's already been tried, and you actually have evidence as to whether or not it worked. So whether it's a personal essay or the social version of the essay, all you'd have to do then is sort of step back and say, I think the solution would or would not work, or maybe it's already been tried, and then all you're doing is explaining or retro-analyzing the success of that particular solution. My topic is on environmentalism, the greenhouse effect, and the lack of regulation on fossil fuel industry. Wanted to do something different than all the COVID essays. Great, I'm eventually going to get sick of COVID essays. Pause for pun groan. And for now, I'll take as many as you got, but I'm glad you're trying to think outside the box and talk about something other than COVID. So yeah, since your essay is specifically about environmental regulation, the concluding paragraph is literally just step back and talk about how likely you think that third solution is to actually work in the real world. Wiping away more pop-up ads and trying to shut them down as quickly as possible. Just to thank you for keeping us up to date. I feel guilty every day about not doing that enough, but I appreciate you saying that. Having this live stream and the videos help explain everything. You're doing a lot more mumble. Good. Well, I'm glad it's helpful. I debate whether or not to do these because sometimes they're so poorly attended. I don't even know what that means. I don't know what 13 out of 126 students I have. So it's less than 10% at the moment. So yeah, keep letting me know, keep giving me feedback through email or through these, whether or not they're helpful, because I hope it's obvious. Part of what I'm doing is scaling up in case in the fall we don't go back to seated classes, and I'm literally going to be Bob Ross doing painting specials, talking about the happy little trees on the screen here, and that's not my natural ecosystem, as I've been saying. So keep letting me know if there's stuff I can fix or help you out with. All the input is helpful at this stage. Swiping away more pop-ups to get to what looks like the bottom of the list. So means that most of our fellow classmates are lazy. Yeah, well, okay. Let me step away. You've got a 2-minute warning. If you want to add any more questions, let me talk about triage for 2 minutes, because I have to, and because even if you don't need to hear it, it might be a helpful concept medically, and it's also how a lot of us are being forced to think about teaching in the current situation. If you didn't know, triage is the process whereby if there's a crisis, a medical crisis as an example, hospital resources become scarce and people have to start really being careful with how they use their own medical resources. And people start running out of things like personal protective equipment or ventilators or actual beds in the hospital. Triage is the process where if things get bad enough, you say, this group isn't healthy enough to save, so we can't waste the equipment on them, so we set them over here and give them morphine and try to make it as peaceful as possible. That's a terrifying concept, and it's also real, and we're skittering so close to that actually happening. The second part of triage are the people who are at risk, but we think we can help. So they have an injury or they're sick, but they're savable. So those are the ones you put the resources on. Then there's a third group who are fine. They can probably wait. They can kind of sit on the curb. They don't have to be immediately in treatment. So we don't want to waste too many resources on them. It isn't obvious what I'm talking about. Many teachers right now are going through that process with the students and kind of deciding the student didn't have the energy, the interest, or the cell phone, which is all it would take for you to get in touch through email. How many of those do we want to save? How many of those are worth the time and effort? Because most of us are maxed out. You're maxed out. I'm maxed out. I'm counting minutes in the day, not hours in the day. So triage is how a lot of us are thinking about that. And it is definitely frightening. And I'm having an internal debate with myself legitimately right now, because I'm sure we're going to be encouraged by the administration to try to reach out to some of the students who just kind of drifted away. And there's an ethical question. That's an example of a qualitative problem. I think you should reach out to the ones who don't have internet access, and that's why they completely just disappeared. Or students who are legitimately, trapped in another country, trapped in New York City, on lockdown, weird circumstances. I want them back. I want them in the class. And again, just to say it one more time, I'll send out another blanket email tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, more likely, that anybody within the sound of my voice can still pass the class. As of tomorrow, happens to be 4:20 that the essays due. Based on that, yes, anybody who gets in touch with me by the end of this week has a path to passing the class, has options in the class to do as best as they can. So as we triage, I'm rooting for kind of one extra subgroup of students to kind of trickle back in. but that still leaves a large group of students who are completely out of the loop and unwilling to make contact. So it's a trade-off. I'm trying to be as wide as I can with my triage so that I'm not cutting out more students than could possibly be helped. But again, if you're sitting at home right now with full internet access and you haven't gotten in touch with any of your teachers, there has to be an element of personal responsibility involved. Keep going. Oh, there's a few more questions. Great. No. I sleep until 4 to do them later. Yeah, I definitely have been staying up later, sleeping in later. I'm going to be a vampire in about 16 days at this rate. That's so scary. True, though, that gets us to just hearing that sounds awful. I agree. Hey, how's it going, man? So I'll give you another 15 to 30 seconds if you want to throw a question on there, ask about the paper, ask about the semester, such as it is, ask about triage and how I'm going to be trying to create 3 groups of students. The ones who are doing so well, they don't need a lot of attention. Chances are if you're watching this, you're in that group. The ones who need a lot of work from me, who need a lot of time where I can engage with you, interact with you, do email exchanges back and forth. That's the whole point of the check-ins. And then the group that I feel like is going to get kind of cut off like an extra limb and drift away. Oh, another question snuck in. Anything about summer classes? I'm not in any of the good gossip loops. I'm a college senator. I have served as a senator with the college senate for 6 years, and I've served on some committees that talk about things like what happens when there's too many snow days. So I'm not hearing anything. I'm not hearing any reliable gossip as to whether or not summer classes will be in person or seated. I'm doing this nonsense because I'm just going to pessimistically operate under the assumption that we're not having seated classes. I have no idea how true that is or not, but I'm just going to expect the worst until somebody tells me otherwise. So in terms of summer classes, I don't have a lot of good intel for you. Even the gossip is completely vague and unreliable, or more vague and unreliable than gossip would typically be. Good. I like to see some cross-pollination, people talking to each other. Excellent. Yeah, one of the reasons I would like to do something like this regularly is what just happened is 2 students found each other from other classes, reaching across the void. That's great. I mean, that's one of the things I liked about teaching when it was in person. So keep that going. I have no idea what a good platform for this is because Blackboard is a nightmare. Google Classroom has its pros and cons. Remind is a bit of a mess, and that's mostly for doing basic messaging back and forth with your smartphone. There should be a platform where eventually we can do things like group discussions. We can do some kind of a community ecosystem situation. We're talking to each other, maybe some group projects are involved. I'm fantasizing into the future though, so don't worry. There's no group presentations. Nobody's going to have to do a Zoom meeting except me to get through this semester. But eventually, yeah, WebEx is out there, Zoom is out there. The trick is picking the one that's most likely to mesh with the other programs. So I have to decide if I pick either a Zoom or a WebEx, which of those is most likely to be compatible with other platforms and which of those may sabotage me or sabotage us if we try to do some kind of an ecosystem style community-based classroom. So yeah, WebEx is on the list, Zoom is on the list, Remind is on the list, Google Teach is on the list, Blackboard should be blacklisted, but it's on the list, and that's how we would get to WebEx presumably. So as we think about going forward, again, I'm really talking to future students here. If we have to go fully online for a full semester, we'll have to decide on some kind of an appropriate platform to launch that. Do you know when we're coming back to school? I wish I had that kind of gossip. I take comfort in the fact that nobody knows. I've been shamelessly watching the New York State governor do updates on the COVID, and clearly there's so many mixed messages going on just in terms of when the local pool hall is going to open up. That's unknown. It's probably going to be a few rungs down the ladder before we get to when are the universities and community colleges going to open up. So unfortunately, no good gossip to hand you on that one. So many new programs. Yeah, I agree. Platform overload is what I'm experiencing. It's a term that I'm going to define right now as what happens when you have too much choice because you have to move from too many platforms, and that creates paralysis in the brain. All right, I'm going to do another 15 seconds, another 15-second count. Throw a question on there. Throw any comments on there. Anything you want me to talk about. Anything you want to know more about the essay. Hope we come back in the fall. Miss seeing each other. I miss seeing people's faces in person also. Again, this is probably, that's as close as I'm going to get to human contact in the near future. That's a struggle. Another 15 seconds. Somebody else wants to ask one more question? Any other things that can help you feel better about this weird semester? All right, I'm going to call it there. 35 minutes without any interruptions. Presumably, your signal was okay. Yeah, well, that's a subject for another day, as Cuomo would say. But for now, thanks for chiming in. Definitely happy to see some people cross-pollinating. Maybe some good ideas are in the works. If not, always email me. I make complaints about how much email I get, but that's really what my job has turned into, so I can't complain too much about that. If you're listening to this, if you kind of chimed in or checked in at any good moment, then you can ask for an extension pretty much for at least a full week. So write me an email if you're having trouble with the essay. Ask for the extension. Ask any questions that you need to. And yeah, till next time. I hope so. This was pretty good. I think we were up to 17 at one point, 16. So you guys take care of each other. I'm going to call it here, and we'll see you next round.